I want to do a video about schizophrenia, a word that's thrown around by all the YouTube parrot scumbag propagandist fucking pieces of rotten scum that are constantly throwing things around that they hear. They have no idea what the fuck they are. They have no idea about the etymology or the creation of ideas and memes in our society at all. And they just throw words around. And schizophrenia is one of those words. And, people complain about the idea of conspiracy theory and being thrown around and being invented by the CIA to delegitimate people's research. If you research things that the mainstream media doesn't talk about, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? Well, they also invented the concept of schizophrenia deliberately, and there's no validity or reliability to any of the studies that supposedly proved the existence of schizophrenia, especially those that prove the genetic predisposition to schizophrenia. Or any kind of physiological diagnosis, any kind of physiological, what do you call it? There's nothing physiological. There is nothing organic. There we go. About schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is not caused by organic. There's a medical word that I can't think of right now, but it doesn't matter. It's been a while since I've researched this, but just heard it again, so I had to rant about it. Schizophrenia is also a term that provides plausible deniability to the increasing police state. Now, when schizophrenia was invented as a word, it was right at the turn of the century. When it was invented as a word, it was at a time when the world was getting smaller, technology was increasing, intelligence was becoming, the intelligence community, so-called, was becoming a little bit more organized, a little bit more mobile, and they invented the term schizophrenia to enable them to have plausible deniability when someone complained about being persecuted by these organized people, like the Freemasons and other groups of people who were very organized and active, and had a lot of things to hide, and were gang stalking people even back 120 years ago, for sure. Driving people crazy. Just think of Franz Kafka's book, The Trial. There was a pretty cool movie that was an adaptation of a bunch of Franz Kafka's works by Steven Soderbergh called Kafka, which depicted, a bunch of people being persecuted, anarchists and other dissidents being persecuted by, the castle. And, those people were labeled and marginalized and called terrorists and mentally ill wackos and nut jobs and tinfoil hat wearing, whatever. This is the same thing has been going on. When someone is complaining about you legitimately and exposing you, it's the fucking oldest trick in the book, you fucking morons. Seriously. You just delegitimate them as a human being using some, taboo, and then it's done. If you can call them schizophrenic, or you can call them a pedophile, or you can call them anything that will completely delegitimate them, and everybody agrees that thing is a horrible thing, then even whether it's true or not, that person's name has been connected with that concept, and it's done. That damage will never be undone anymore. It will never be undone again. Ever. And that's the oldest trick in the book. So schizophrenia was invented for that reason. Now, there's a guy named Peter Bragg that wrote a book called Toxic Psychiatry. A book whose bibliography is extremely, it's very dense and rich bibliography of a bunch of very revealing books that were written throughout history, recent history, about brain research, mind control research, and things like that. Books like The Mind Stealers by Samuel Chavkin, the Brain Control. I can't remember the author of that one. A couple of like a Foucault on the Foucault book called about madness, something on madness. I can't remember that one, but you just look up Michel Foucault and madness, and you'll find the book. Civilization and Madness or something like that. I think Maslow's book on there. Vernon, Mark, and the guy Irvin, and the guys Vernon and Mark, whatever the scientists that were involved in the Thomas R story, where the guy was had a bunch of implants that the Terminal Man book by Michael Crichton was based on. The actual story about Boston Medical Center being with these two scientists. Can't remember the names. I think it was Vernon Mark and another guy by the last name of Irvin, and they were involved in mind control experiments. They put implants into some guy's brain, and then they made an adaptation, a science fiction adaptation about it, and called it Terminal Man, which became a movie as well. And so all these books, among which was the most important book, where Peter Bragg gets all of his information from regarding the creation of schizophrenia and the invalid and unreliable construct, which is schizophrenia. The book, The Politics of Schizophrenia, by David Hill, published in, I believe, 1983 from a university press, which was Dr. Hill's PhD thesis, proves to any logical thinker beyond a shadow of a doubt that schizophrenia was definitely created for a political reason, and that all of the symptomology is very inconsistent, that the prognosis is inconsistent and unreliable, that the diagnosis is inconsistent and unreliable, that the etiology is inconsistent and unreliable, that the prognosis is inconsistent and unreliable, that it's basically a set of symptoms that is created by the destruction in one form or another of the basal ganglia, which is a nerve bundle that runs from the cerebral cortex to the limbic system, that allows you to sort of connect your ego and superego, or your emotions to your cerebral and higher minded regulatory logical centers of your brain. Your logical processing centers, which is in your cerebral cortex, your frontal cortex, which is why the age-old and still practiced in some places today prescription of lobotomy, which is a cutting. They stuck a fucking ice pick up into your fucking head and swiped it across your basal ganglia and ripped your basal ganglia, basically, or cut it, to destroy your cerebral cortex communicating with your limbic system, so that you could no longer act on your emotions, essentially, and you'd had no emotions. Yeah. So two other ways in which the basal ganglia is severed completely from your cerebral cortex and your limbic system, the nerve bundle that runs between them, which regulates the synergistic processing of emotions and thoughts, is antipsychotic medications such as Thorazine or Haldol, Stelazine, all these very powerful antipsychotics, all of which cause several of the symptoms of schizophrenia, including tardive dyskinesia, tardive akathisia, flat affect, speech disturbances and like illogical speech patterns, bizarre thinking. Those are all caused by those antipsychotic drugs and destruction of the basal ganglia. And then electroconvulsive shock therapy, where they used to either in the electroconvulsive shock therapy and also convulsive shock therapy that was done through the administration of a certain drug, and I can't remember what it's called, but they were able to give people drugs that would have them have convulsions, which would damage the basal ganglia permanently. So, schizophrenia, if you look at the DSM manual, DSM-4, all the DSMs had schizophrenia, but it has definitely been a diagnosis that has been largely massaged and changed over this last century. It began as a diagnosis called dementia praecox, where Emil Kraepelin defined it as a set of symptoms that were akin to hysteria in all of the major, basically, they were labeling people as hysterical if they complained about the Masons back in the day. So dementia praecox was like a precocious dementia, right? Dementia before your time. So hence dementia praecox, Latin for precocious dementia. Then it was massaged over the years to include and disinclude several different meanings. Typically, originally, split personality disorder was included as almost the primary definition of schizophrenia. People used to consider the term schizophrenia as a synonym for a split personality, because schizo actually means split mind. Like schizophrenia actually means split mind, apparently. So that's what the term actually means. So now it means, delusions of reference, delusions that people are watching you, delusions that you're someone important, that you were a king in a past life, or you're Jesus Christ. There's also there's flat affect. There's there's tardive dyskinesia. There's disjointed speech. There's bizarre ideations, inability to maintain friendships and normal social interactions. Agoraphobia. Certain things are suspicion, hypervigilance of people around you. And then there's all sorts of, schizotypal and, schizophreniform, sub-genres of, symptomology for all sorts of schizophreniform disorders that have all been invented, which all include either chemical, electrical, or physical lobotomy by cutting with an ice pick the basal ganglia, by shoving an ice pick up through the eye socket into your brain and cutting your basal ganglia. Yeah. Morons. Parrots. So keep saying the word schizophrenia and keep telling everybody that schizophrenia exists. It doesn't. Brain damage exists. Medical brain damage through lobotomy, electroconvulsive therapy, convulsive therapy, and antipsychotic drugging of people who complain too much. That exists. The things about which people complain also exist. The things that people have been traditionally institutionalized for exist, but it's that there are power structures in the world that don't want to, let the cat out of the bag quite yet. So when someone, complains too vociferously, oftentimes they are lobotomized or institutionalized or both. They're lobotomized chemically or, electrically or whatever. They can do it remotely now. I mean, they can give you electroconvulsive therapy from, from a directed energy weapon outside of your home. So, these people aren't fucking around. They do not want to be exposed for all the shit that they've done over the years. And the longer they go and the more shit that they do, the less they want to be exposed, because the shit just keeps piling up and piling up and piling up as they dig their holes deeper, deeper, and deeper and deeper. And you all want to keep repeating their conveniently invented term schizophrenia, even though it is the antithesis of truth. Schizophrenia is actually, the label of schizophrenia is the golden key, the fucking magic bullet that destroys truth. Because as soon as you go to a psychiatrist and start telling him the truth, that the FBI is following you, or that the pigs are fucking raping your brain, or whatever, people are reading your mind. These technologies, they've had them for half a century now. They've been working on the exact things that people are supposedly delusional about, which gain them the dubious label of schizophrenic, are happening. And they have been happening for a long period of time. And to label someone as having a mental disorder without actually disproving or ruling out the things about which they are complaining being fallacious or delusional is totally unscientific. Just as an interesting punctuation to this conversation that I'm having with you, just in a Wikipedia article in 2008, I remember reading that in England, or in Britain, Great Britain, whatever you want to call it, the United Kingdom, no, the people don't like that there. They don't like to call it the United Kingdom. But anyway, because of the potato famine and, the IRA and bombings, and they don't like to call it the United. It's not a United Kingdom at all. But in Great Britain, in England, where those weirdos live that live in those old extremely ornate buildings that weren't destroyed in the London bombing, the few buildings that were left, like Buckingham Palace and stuff like that, those people over there, there's something like 2% per capita of schizophrenia diagnosis in England as there is in America. In other words, something like 20,000 times per capita of people going to a psychiatrist in America will be diagnosed with schizophrenia, as in England. In other European countries, it's even less. So the diagnosis of schizophrenia is extremely elastic, and it is extremely inconsistent across borders and across cultures. And in American culture, schizophrenia is used by far the most of any country in the world. And it is used as a political tool to delegitimate a person who is complaining too much. So stop using the fucking word schizophrenia, or I will go out and find you and I will bash your fucking brains in with a baseball bat, you fucking scumbags. You don't have free speech if you're talking about schizophrenia. I am the king, and I will come and find you, and I will kill you if you keep spreading this lie.